E-I-E-I-O.
There are many facts that have been left out of the history books about the role that the women played. These red berets and these red armbands faced danger, faced shotguns, faced the buckshot, faced the tear gas. This armband still has the tear gas on it. The Women's Emergency Brigade of Flint, Michigan made American history. We are the foremothers of today's young women, and we are proud of it. Because it was there that I learned the great stamina and the great courage and the intelligence and the foresight and the daring of women when they're put under fire. I think that you men saw that too. And it was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had.
During the Depression, they were hiring at Briggs. So I went in the plant, and I'd never been in a plant before in my life, and the noise was terrific. I thought I couldn't stand it. I got nervous just looking around. All these people working, and rushing here, rushing there, and the lines going. Well, I'm just a kid, really. So I get the spot welder, and every time I get my two little pieces together and start welding, and those sparks would fly, well, I would drop everything.
I love machines, any kind of machine. But my husband, when I left, said, now, if they want to offer you a job and put you on one of the big machines, don't take it. I didn't answer because I knew I was going to take anything I could get, because back then, he didn't have a job, either work or starve.
That's right.
That's right. Sometimes I'd make these instrument panels. They used to be real pretty, all made out of metal and varnished. It was real pretty. I made a lot of those, and doors, 10 hours a day, 25 cents an hour. I sure made the money.
Now, in my particular case, my father wasn't working. He was a carpenter. It was wintertime, and they didn't work much then, and it was Depression time. So my sister and I were supporting the family of 7. Sometimes we'd go to work and work 2 hours, maybe be sent home. No sick benefits. There was no health and welfare.
He used to come up the stairs with swollen hands and just throw himself flat on the floor, and he couldn't sometimes hold a fork in his hands afterward. The man was so driven by the speed up inside the factory that he came home unable to be a decent companion to either his wife or children, and she had to take an awful lot of bad treatment from her husband. When a person is driven beyond human endurance, you become just so resentful inside yourself, it's got to spill out somewhere. Very often the men would go to beer gardens to release all of the tensions and the threats they had received.
We wouldn't have been able to do it.
General Motors had a lot of people, that tried to cause trouble and discourage us. We called them General Motors goons. Our lives were in danger. They were actually prepared with guns and stuff right in the shop, the General Motors men. They were just waiting for our men to do something so they could get at them. That's where this bull run started. There was quite a battle there that day. The radio had announced to the city of Flint that a riot had broken out down on Chevrolet Avenue in front of Fisher 2, and a revolutionary situation was developing, and you can imagine what an electric shock that was for Flint. And we were down there with unarmed men, just hinges, paving bricks, picking up the fire bombs and throwing them back, and the tear gas and the rest of it. The populace, including my parents at the time, the populace of the city drove down, just as they do for a fire at any time, to gather in back of the police
to watch, to observe this. The police said, get back, it's dangerous, but they were there to observe. The men were speaking out to the people beyond the police lines, explaining what we're fighting for, what had happened, how the battle broke out. When this happened, we had only the sound car broadcasting to those people. We had nobody on our side. Victor Ruther and many of the others were there that night on the sound car, the men. And finally, Victor came up to us and he says, maybe we're going to have to lose this battle, but we won't lose the war. He said, but the batteries on the sound truck are running down. And I said, oh, let me speak then, Victor. And he looked at me and he said, well, I guess it can't hurt any. So I got up on the sound car and I was desperate. And I decided to appeal to the women of the city of Flint at that point. The men had done a marvelous job all evening long, but I got up there and I said, women of the city of Flint, break through those police lines and come down here and stand with your husbands and your brothers, your sons and your sweethearts. I said, they're firing into the bellies of unarmed men down here. The police are cowards. And if they're cowards enough to fire into unarmed men, they're cowards enough to fire on the mothers of children also.